So for years, I found myself resistant to New Year's resolutions because they felt, I don't know, almost punitive. And for me, filled with like a shame of, oh, I can't believe I haven't done all this stuff sooner. And I started wondering, what if rest became our resolution? Let's find out. After years of working with human beings on their current feelings and their future vision, I have come to realize that I am not alone in my feelings that New Year's resolutions are a little painful. In fact, I found it isn't always helpful to fill our January with resolutions that are all about self-improvement, sometimes just for self-improvement's sake. We really need instead to take some time in the new year to slow down and observe, both internally and externally. Take stock, if you will, about what's working, what has worked, what isn't working, what we might want to work in the future, and really, how do we feel in this moment, and how do we want to feel going forward? And then most importantly, I think, what do we need in order to feel that way? So my first thought when coming up with themes for the new year and all the work that I do was rest as resolution. Like I said in the opening, a few times as I was typing that out for different reasons, I wrote revolution accidentally, rest as revolution. And that mistake actually turned into a new idea because I work mostly with women, and the idea of rest and taking time to slow down and tune in and take care of ourselves feels sometimes revolutionary, especially today when things in the world seem to be pointed against us. Taking time to rest, taking times for ourselves as women might be a revolutionary act. So we're going to start today's lesson, if you will, with the basics, which is sleep, why it's important, what happens when we don't get it, why aren't we getting enough of it, and how can we start turning all of that around? So when I was a mom of young kids, I was really almost obsessively fixated on making sure they got enough sleep. I planned things around bedtimes. I made sure there was a ritual for bedtime that included them unwinding and getting ready to be right asleep when it was time. I arranged their rooms in such a way. I read up on how best to get them to sleep. I read on why they needed sleep, on how much sleep they needed at different developmental phases. I sometimes didn't let them do things because it would be too late into the evening. I was really down the rabbit hole of how important sleep was for my kids because I understood, partially because I've been told, but partially just because I understood human development, how important all the things a growing human needs are during those times when our body is resting and resetting for the next day. Things happen in your mind, things happen in your body, you're growing, you're adapting, you're putting all those things into concrete place that you took in during the day. All that happens during sleep. And I understood as a parent that my job was to make sure these growing humans got enough of it to help them grow. So I can't help but think then, why do we all, at least everybody I know, grow out of that or think that it's not as important anymore for us? We're so concerned about our kids getting the rest they need to grow and evolve and change, but we forget that we need it too. Women especially, we start to put everybody else first. Our sleep gets dropped down to the bottom almost as soon as another person enters our life. And we stop doing the very basic thing that we need to take care of ourselves. I want to give you some statistics, and I'm not meaning to scare you, but I just want you to hear how serious this is. And this goes all the way back to 2013. So it's an old study, but a study that I found in the Sleep Medicine Research Journal reported 30% of pregnant women and 42% of postpartum women. So almost half of all the women surveyed reported not getting enough sleep. I actually think those numbers might be low. In pregnancy, you almost don't realize you're not getting enough sleep because everything's so new and strange and exciting. But 42 feels like it's low to me. Just anecdotally from the women that I speak with, I feel like every one of them, 100% of the women I work with postpartum are not getting enough sleep. And that's not even to speak to anecdotally the women that I work with and just know in day-to-day passing. It's a common conversation how we're not getting enough sleep. We're not falling asleep. We're not able to stay asleep. We have to get up in the middle of the night to go to the restroom. So you have perinatal, you have postpartum, you have pregnant, you have postpartum, and then you have everybody else I know in the you know, perimenopause and menopause years that are talking about how they're not getting enough sleep. So even though that study, I'm not sure what they consider postpartum, I can tell you anecdotally that women in perimenopause also report sleep issues. And so when you look up, well, why aren't women getting enough sleep? What are some of the factors? You read things like pregnancy, postpartum, and hormonal changes that have to do with menstruating and pregnancy and postpartum. Aging is a thing that's listed as why women aren't getting enough sleep. Well, aren't we all aging? And then you have stress and life transitions, and maybe depression is thrown in there too. So between those age groups in that study and the overall factors of the reasons why women aren't getting enough sleep, that basically encompasses every female on the planet, from girls to women. It basically means you go from your teen years, where we know nobody's getting enough sleep because there's a million studies and news reports about that, to menstruating, childbearing years, where we know nobody's getting enough sleep, to perimenopause and menopause, where we also know nobody's getting enough sleep. So maybe some women in their early 20s are getting enough sleep, but if you have any kind of nightlife, I can probably guarantee the sleep isn't so great either. So it feels like it's pretty safe to say, based on all this data, anecdotal and otherwise, that women aren't getting enough sleep. And so why does that matter? Well, according to another post I read on a Yale School of Medicine website, so theoretically based on some research, they didn't really cite anything, but I would assume in the Yale School of Medicine, they're basing this on research data. Either way, they report that poor sleep can affect our memory, our attention, our focus, and our reaction times. All of those things then affect our learning and our behavior. In addition, I know because I've read, I don't know because I'm not, a medical doctor, but I've read that poor sleep can wreak havoc on your physical body as well. From everything from your immune system weaknesses to your metabolism slowing down, poor sleep is linked to all kinds of things, from heart disease to diabetes. And from professional experience, I do know that sleep is one of those factors that we ask about in every mental health intake. And we worked on with every patient I've ever worked on a safety plan, meaning how are you managing your symptoms? And sleep is amongst the top sort of mental hygiene things that we need to be doing in order to both stave off some symptoms, but also recognize symptoms before they become overwhelming. All this is to say that sleep matters maybe more than anything else for our overall health and well-being, as much as it mattered for those little kids of mine that I kept fixating on making sure they got enough sleep for their growing and evolving bodies. I'll tell you a little personal story about myself. The first baby that I had, I thought I knew what to expect. We sort of all do. I read all the books. I talked to other people. I was friends with people who already had kids. I thought I knew. I knew I wasn't getting enough sleep. I knew I wasn't sleeping really well during pregnancy. So I just figured it would be more of the same. I had no concept of what it meant to wake up every 2 hours and then have to feed somebody. I also didn't understand when you were waking up every 3 hours to feed, that part of those 3 hours of part of those awake times were also feeding. And so you were awake, feeding, back down, and then probably awake more like 2 hours later instead of 3. So the whole thing was a 3-hour cycle, but that included mostly you being awake for an hour. I didn't get that until I got it. And I think any new parent, whether you physically birthed the baby, had a surrogate, adopted, infants don't sleep well. So it doesn't sort of matter whether you are pregnant first or not. If you have a newborn in the house, you understand what it means to not sleep very well. And I didn't understand at the time what that meant for my waking hours, how I would be more irritable, how this baby thing would seem near impossible some days when I didn't have enough sleep, how I would think everybody else was sort of out to get me because they were walking around living their lives just fine and I could barely function, how mad I was at myself that I couldn't function. I didn't understand what it meant to be without sleep until I was without sleep. My third kid came around and was a terrible sleeper. My first kid was like textbook, up every 3 hours, feeding. As she evolved, she slept 4, she slept 5. She was due in September. She was born in September. By the time we got to Thanksgiving, we slept 6 hours and it was like a miracle. And we were totally different people. when we woke up the next day. So she was textbook infant, did everything the way that the book said she would. My third one barely slept ever. Couldn't get settled, but so then was also constantly tired and irritable. So awake time wasn't much better than sleep time. And it was my third child. So I understood the house didn't need to be spotless. The laundry didn't always need to be done on time. I didn't need to do the dishes here, there, and everywhere. And so I was able to sleep when he slept. I was able to put him on me and walk around and do other things so that he slept. Because if he got sleep, that meant he slept better at night. I understood a little bit more about the importance of sleep, and my expectations for what I was meant to do completely flipped. My expectations for when I had my third child were everybody gets sleep. Me, the other two kids, the baby. That's the most important thing. Feed them and sleep. Whereas with the first one, I thought I had to be super mom and do all of the things right. And it led to a lot of lack of sleep and a lot of fights between my husband and I, and a lot of irritability. Ultimately, this is not the cause, but ultimately I had postpartum depression with my first one. And I understood how much easier it was to manage that if I got enough sleep by the time I got to my third one. All this is to say, women who aren't getting enough sleep, what do we do? Whether you have a brand new baby or whether you are in the camp with me where all your babies don't even live at home anymore. How are we taking care of ourselves in the sleep and rest as revolution? So I never want to share all of this data and all of this information just to be negative, just to be like, oh, here's one more reason why you need to be worried. Instead, I want to be informative enough to sort of push us to make some changes. So if you're watching this and you're bouncing a baby on your hip, I want you to do two things. Take that sleep when you can get it. Don't worry about the laundry. Don't worry about the dishes. Don't worry about if everybody's dressed and ready and pretty and ready and Instagram worthy. If that baby sleeps and you're tired, lay down and close your eyes. Even if you don't think you can fall asleep, lay down and rest. Give yourself that opportunity. If the baby isn't sleeping, like mine, ask for help. Even if you don't have, 10 family members around, or you don't have, free daycare or paid daycare, if you have a partner who can maybe take a day or so off work to be like, I need to reset. Can you be in charge? If you have a partner that you can work out nighttime stuff with or daytime stuff, if they can leave for work a little bit later so you can sleep in a little bit and they bounce the baby on their hip. If it's just the two of you and you have to figure it out between the two of you, talk about it and try to figure it out together. And also know that it doesn't last forever. There will be a time where that baby will sleep. I promise. It happens. Your number one job is to take care of you, and then you will be able to take care of that baby. And if you've tried everything and you can't figure out how to fix it or how to get more or how to feel better, please talk to somebody. I remember I talked about how sleep is the sort of almost number one factor a lot of times in mental health treatment. Are you getting enough or are you not getting enough and you don't seem to notice? We check it on both ends. If you're not getting enough, but all these other things are happening, you're having intrusive thoughts, or you don't feel tired or sad and you're not sleeping, or you're sleeping. All you want to do is sleep. Talk to somebody. That's why we're here. And it's okay. The help is out there and you need it. Ask for it. If you're in one of the other categories, if you're watching this and you're like me and you're like, I don't understand why I'm not sleeping. I don't have babies anymore. What's going on? Why do I go to sleep and wake up 2 hours later, even if I don't have to go to the bathroom? Why are the heat sweats, the night sweats getting me up? Or why am I waking up with anxiety dreams? Or why, all the myriad reasons we're not getting enough sleep. I want to ask you to look at, are you taking care of yourself? Do you have the sort of basic sleep hygiene stuff? If you wake up in the middle of the night, are you reaching for your phone? Because that blue light is not helping us out. So put the phone away far from you so that you're not tempted in the middle of the night to wake up. Or if the phone is something like, I use the Calm app sleep stories. And if I wake up in the middle of the night, sometimes that helps me get back to sleep, having those soothing sounds in my ear. But I have the vision way down on my phone so that it's not too bright. And I try not to look at it. I sort of know by rote where I can poke to get that Calm app and turn those things on. There's other ways to do it where you can have it up and ready. So you just have to kind of push one button. My point is, how can you minimize interruptions to your sleep that are external? Because you're going to get enough internally as it is. Also, are you moving during the day? I sit at this desk a lot. If I'm not at this desk, I'm at the desk in my other office a lot. I need to make sure that I'm not only exercising on purpose, like at the gym or the pool or something like that, but also I got to get up in between clients and walk around. Sometimes I walk down to the coffee shop that's local and get myself a cup of coffee. Sometimes I walk to, get lunch somewhere. Sometimes I just walk around the block if it's nice enough, just to get my body moving and get that exercise in. That helps you sleep later. It's tricky because if you do it too close to when you go to sleep, sometimes it's hard to wind down. And also I go back to my coffee, no caffeine for me afternoon. I have 1 to 2, sometimes 2 if I'm feeling a little sassy, caffeinated drinks first thing in the morning when I wake up. I have a cup of coffee or a cup of espresso. And then the rest of the day is decaf if I have anything at all. Also sugar. You got to watch your sugar intake when you get older, because the closer you are to bedtime, the more you're going to be awake with that stuff. So looking at your blue light stuff, looking at your overall environment. Do you have the right blankets? Do you have the right temperature in the room? Do you have a fan on you if you need a fan on you? The point is, don't be afraid to take care of yourself. My husband and I kind of go back and forth sometimes, because I will sometimes go sleep in our basement because it started because he snores. But actually now a lot of times it's like it's cooler down there. Also, it's super dark down there. So I'm going to sleep the entire time. And I know that. And it used to bother him because, of course, we're married. He wants to sleep in the same bed. But I would be like, this has nothing to do with you. I need to sleep. And I know this is how it's going to happen. You have to be afraid to not take care of yourself. Remember, our rest is our revolution. So checking your environment, tuning in to see what you need to feel better, and then looking at how can I do it to support myself? What changes can I make? What things can I do? And what things can I have in my environment that help me to get the rest that I need? And then I always have to end on consulting your medical or mental health professional if you are feeling like you're underneath it and you can't get out from under it. Feeling tired all the time can be a symptom of depression, and also not needing sleep can be a symptom of a mental health issue as well. And also feeling tired all the time can be a symptom of a bunch of different physical things. So if you're feeling like, okay, she's right, I need a little more sleep, but I've done the things and I have the environment and I'm all the blah, 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 and I'm still not feeling rested, and I'm still feeling like I'm not getting enough, or I'm still feeling like I can't, seek professional help, one or the other, or both, physical and mental, because you shouldn't have to do it alone. There are solutions out there, and there are people who will help you take care of yourself. You just have to ask. All right. Thank you. Month 1 of Rest as Revolution, starting with sleep. Tune in next time to see what else we got for you. Thanks for listening. Stay curious.